stepping back and stroking two. Bogdanovich thinking about a three. There it is. Yes!
See it again. No double team help, and Embiid takes it right to the rack.
Embiid, step back, jumper, you bet. There he is again. The Euro step there. Embiid getting Gobert in a fight.
Nice feed to Embiid.
The feed to Embiid is back with an all-new episode. It is the playoffs. The Sixers are hosting the Toronto Raptors in the first round as a 4 versus 5 seed matchup. This is Austin Krell, as always, along with my pal Ky Carlin of Sixers Wire and USA Today. Ky, we are how many days? We are technically 2, I guess, and almost no, about 3 days out.
3 days
out from this playoff series starting. How are you doing the last couple days before the onslaught of work starts?
I am I'm still figuring out how to get to Toronto. So I think I have my plan. I think I'm all set, but I have to wait for confirmation, but I think I'm all set. But yeah, traveling to Toronto is what's stressing me out the most.
So did you get your passport yet?
Getting it tomorrow.
Okay. So you'll be all right.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so.
And if not, we'll see on the other. We'll see you back in Philly in 6 months.
No.
After they release you from jail.
Cut it out. Don't even speak that into the air. Don't even...
Oh man.
Yeah, I'd be terrible in jail.
Who would your first call go to?
My first call? Probably my mother. I mean, come on.
Fair enough. All right.
Mom.
Fair enough. All right. We got a series to break down.
Yes.
Like I said, 4 versus 5, Sixers, Raptors. Sixers have home court advantage. Just going to walk through some of the numbers here first. The Raptors are 16th in offense at 112.9 points per 100 possessions. They have an effective field goal percentage of 51.2%, which is 27th in the NBA. So they struggle shooting the ball a little bit. They're not great at getting to the line, but they're not great at shooting the ball, I should say, because that's really what effective field goal is. The defensive end of the court is really where they get their chops. They give up 110.7 points per 100 possessions. They have a turnover percentage of 16.4%, which in other words means that their opponents 16.4% of the opponent's possessions and turnovers that is best in the NBA. So they get you backpedaling on defense, and they run the ball right down your throat. This is going to pose a problem for the Sixers this series.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like when you kind of look at when you really kind of break this series down and you just kind of did by the numbers, and then you go back and watch the 4 games in the regular season. Well, I mean, I guess you can't really take too much stock in the first 2 games just because both teams were really missing a lot of pieces in the first 2. But even when you look at the last 2 and Harden played in those games, Sixers struggled, man. I think Harden shot 3 for 12 in the last matchup with Toronto. In the first matchup with Toronto that Harden played in, the Sixers were down by 2 with like late in the game, and Harden drives in and he barrels into, I think it was Precious Achiuwa, and he picks up an offensive foul, which then got turned into a flagrant 1. The Raptors are tough, man. They're physical. They're tough. And they play a lot of junk defenses. I've noticed that Toronto, they won't just play one style. They're one of those teams that kind of throws a bunch of different defenses at you, whether it be a zone, man-to-man, box and one. Whatever works. The Raptors are going to throw whatever the hell they can at you and find something that sticks. So, and also on top of that, they got a lot of versatility, a lot of length. So it's going to be really interesting how the Sixers kind of attack all of that in this series.
Yeah, for sure. They'll throw a triangle, and two. They'll throw a box and one. They don't. They're not ones to, um, get too typical with their defense. They're going to mix some things up. They're going to throw some things that you're not comfortable with at you. Um, and it's going to be on the Sixers to navigate that. And I think the paramount thing here is, yeah, with Harden, it's problematic in a lot of ways because he's having trouble beating switches right now against mismatches. If they're bigger guys, they're able to stay in front of them. If they're smaller guys, he isn't able to blow by them at all. So he's having a lot of problems just using his wheels to create space and crack the interior. And he's ineffective in that regard. And they were throwing traps at Embiid. Like he's seeing 2-3 guys on him every time he catches the ball, and it's forcing him into difficult shots or keeping him away from the paint, and that's problematic for him as well. I think number one, the Sixers have been really good at taking care of the ball for the most part this year. Obviously, you're going to commit turnovers. You're better off. You're best served having them come in the dead ball variety, out of bounds instead of live ball. Open court turns and missed shots and whatnot. So if they can take care of the ball in that regard, they'll be in good shape. Toronto's half court offense, they average 91.3 points per 100 half court plays, which is 26th in the NBA. So Toronto's goal is just going to be to get you out in transition and make the Sixers run. Problem is, all season long, transition has been a major problem. So that's going to be the story of this series: is how much can Toronto force the Sixers into errors on offense and make them run back on defense. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like you kind of brought up like an interesting point. You just brought up Toronto's transition offense. Like the Toronto's two strengths are rebounding and transition scoring in transition. The Sixers' two weaknesses have been rebounding and transition defense. Now, I kind of look at it, and the game obviously slows down in the playoffs. Like who knows? Like I don't even know, Austin, if the Raptors are going to have the same type of transition opportunities in this series that they had in the regular season. But they will be able to rebound the ball well because that's always been their MO for one. And they have the length and the size and the players really like the want to kind of go out and go do it and go get it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the Sixers should win this series because they have more talent. But Toronto's tough, man. Like they're a physical bunch or a physical group, and Nick Nurse always seems to come up with like the greatest game plan ever when it comes to defending Joel. I mean, Joel may get his points, but he's going to be working his ass off to get them.
Right. So like they're very long, Toronto, and as a result, they can show pressure and shade you and deny you the ball. They can when you get the ball, they can really get up in your space, make it harder for you to see over them and or act over them or around them. And then on top of that, they have a lot of athleticism, so they can go and sell out on you and then recover back to their man if you make that pass to a different teammate, to a teammate who's open. So they're going to pose. This isn't to say that they're necessarily a better team, but
no, Toronto's not the better team.
What this is to say is that Toronto, their strengths fit exactly into the Sixers' weaknesses, and that's problematic.
Right, and that's why I think the series goes long. I mean, I think this series could go 6, maybe even 7 games. Like it could reach there. Like my prediction at the moment is Sixers in 7. Just kind of looking at things. And I think it's only, and the only reason why I'm even picking the Sixers is because they're going to have the two best players in the series, in Joel and James. I also factor in, Austin, that Fred VanVleet's kind of been struggling going into these playoffs. He's dealing with a knee injury for one. But I think over his final 21 games of the year that he did play, I think he shot only somewhere around 37% from the floor, and that's not from deep. That's from the floor overall.
Yeah.
So I think Van Vliet, his injury and the fact that he has been struggling a little bit, the fact that the Sixers can kind of throw a bunch of different guys at him. Tyrese Maxey will certainly be one to bother him. And Maxey was talking about the other day at practice about how he is, hoping to kind of cut off a bunch of different things that he can offer. So that's another factor that's going to play into the series. I think that's having me again kind of lean more towards Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, I think another weakness in the series for the Sixers is going to be, like, I'm looking at Toronto's roster. They realistically can play 10 guys, like Precious Achiuwa, OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, Kem Birch, Chris Boucher.
Who's a Sixer killer.
Yeah, Pascal Siakam, Gary Trent Jr., Fred Van Vliet, Yuta Watanabe, and Thaddeus Young. That's 10 guys. They can go 10 deep. Sixers have 8 guys total that you can trust. So Toronto's going to
8?
I think you have 8.
Well, I mean, think about it. And then in Toronto, you're only going to have like 6 or 7 because of Matisse.
So you're going to have 7 in Toronto because I think Danny and George. Well, Danny will be a starter, so George and Shake or two that you off the bench.
Okay, but even with George though, and you and I have talked about this a couple of times. Not just
he's too fleet of foot, too slow, so
right.
He can't really stay on the court. But I think if you play him 14, 15 minutes a game in this series, he can give you just a lot of threes going up, and you'll take his chances,
which will be huge. And I mean, like if Niang is going to hit those threes, and yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to offset the fact that he's not going to be able to maybe help out as much on the defensive end. But then also we go back to the rebounding thing. I mean, watching Niang rebound against this Raptor team was tough, and he's going to have to step up a bit on the glass in this series. Like that's going to be such a big thing. Such a huge factor just going into these playoffs. Like they need George Niang to be able not only knock down threes, but he's got to give you something on rebounding.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you, but at the same time, you're going to have to play him because inevitably you just don't have many.
Right, right. Because who else are you going to play?
Right, but I think like. It isn't so much about having competent guys off the bench. It's that the more bodies that you can trust off the bench, the more you can rest your best players. And that is critical going into the fourth quarter. Because if Embiid and Harden have already played 40 minutes heading into the fourth quarter, and those guys and Siakam and Van Vliet and whoever else you want to name has only played 36, 37, they're going to be fresher in the final 4 minutes of the game.
No,
so that's going to be problematic. For the home games, because that's when Matisse Thybulle will be available after his, after his decisions. The home games where Matisse Thybulle is playing, you'll notice that in those games, the Raptors are basically selling out on him. They're like saying, "We're going to give you the 3-point line in the corner. We're going
but that happens with everything.
Yeah, we're going to give you an entire funnel to the basket. Like we're going to say, like we're going to give you the entire strip of land on the court that from the corner 3 to the baseline and block area to do whatever you want, and we're going to sell out and play high." So Thybulle has that entire back lane to cut.
Now, see, Shake, hold on, just real quick. Going back to Shake, I just pulled up his numbers against Toronto this year. They're pretty good. He shot 4 for 6 from deep in 3 games against Toronto. He shot 8 for 10 overall. Got to the free throw line. True shooting percentage of 96.5%.
Yeah, which is insane.
So, I know that's pretty crazy. Yeah. But yes, averaged 7 points per game off the bench in 3 games against Toronto. So clearly he was able to find something. But the crazy thing is, I'm looking at the plus minus again per Basketball Reference, and his plus minus is minus 40.7 in 88 minutes, or excuse me, 44 minutes played.
Plus minus can't be a point number. Like you can't have a point. You can't have a decimal in a plus minus.
No, I know that. So I'm very curious about like what they're like adding to like this plus minus. Is that like a plus minus average, or is that like
probably an average? Yeah,
probably.
Yeah.
But I'm very curious about that. Either way, Shake was able to find like some type of offensive success against them. And I kind of agree with you. He's going to be very important. But then, Austin, I do ask you this question: when they're in Toronto, Matisse can't play. Are you turning to Furkan Korkmaz?
No. You're gonna have to say, like, we're gonna need 36, 37, 38, 39 minutes out of the guys on the wings. We're gonna need that.
Okay, but I think you and I both know, after covering Doc now for almost 2 years, Doc is probably going to turn to Furkan Korkmaz in the games in Toronto.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't advise it, but it is what it is. I am interested in the idea of not just playing Shake at the guard spots, but playing him on the wings, because I think
a small three.
Yeah, I think he's long, and I think he has the wingspan where he can give you some of that defensive versatility that Thibault can give you, and he can disrupt passing lanes in ways that I don't think anybody else on the roster besides Matisse can do. But this series really, I think, is going to be won by the depth factor, and their ability to basically count on their teammates to make plays. Like, Toronto is going to have the depth, but the Sixers have the two best players in the series, like you said, and that might be all they need. But what I think the important thing is here, is that, like, they're going to double Joel. They're going to double, triple Joel. They're going to switch Harden. They're going to switch with Harden to take away his driving, and that's inherently rim protection in itself. So when they're making those swing passes, you need one guy to put a hurting on them, and that is Tyrese Maxey. They're going to need Maxey to attack closeouts and get to the middle of the floor, and then make either get to the basket and make shots, or kick to the opposites, to the weak side, and really put Toronto into their rotations. I think one of the biggest things for the Sixers, and specifically Tyrese Maxey, is the fact that he's developed such strong and such good body control at the rim.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, I think obviously Embiid and Harden are going to kind of carry this team in terms of the offensive load in this series, but I think you kind of alluded to it earlier. We just really didn't get too much into it. Harden is having a tough time exploiting bigger matchups when they switch onto him, and that's where Maxey has to come in, and Maxey has to kind of come in and really give this team a spark on the offensive end in terms of being able to get to the basket. Getting into the paint is always Philadelphia's MO, right? Like, how many times have they struggled on the offensive end? And it's because they're not getting into the paint, and they're not really making any headway to the basket, because then at that point they're able to attract defenses, and then it's just a kick out from there. So I'm very interested to see how they attack that. I'm very interested to see how they defend Toronto in transition and trying to make them the half court team, because they struggled in the half court, and then you add Fred VanVleet's injury, and we don't know about OG Anunoby either. I mean, he's been hurt for a good majority of the year. So this series should be a Sixers win, Austin, but I'm also very concerned about Harden putting up a playoff clunker. We all know he's good for one or two of them. So we don't know if it's going to be in this series or if it's going to be in the next series. Just very curious to see what happens with that.
My stance on that is, if he does, fine, then he's just less likely to take to hold them over the barrel for a max deal this summer, and be like, yeah, I'll just take the player option and we'll see where it goes from there. And then they can retool a little bit. I mean, listen, we'll get into this more later. You and I have discussed ad nauseum off the record what we think about this team. We'll get into that more later. But another area of concern for me. So I'm for my own written preview. I'm pulling Sixers' three best lineups. This is the net ratings of their three best lineups. Their best lineup, the best they have on the team, of course, includes Matisse Thybulle, who won't be able to play 3 games of the series.
Right.
That lineup is a plus 20.2 per 100 possessions. It's the best lineup in the NBA since the trade deadline. Next best lineup: Harden, Maxey, Danny Green, Tobias, Joel. That's likely going to be your starting five for the entire series.
Yeah.
That lineup in 74 minutes of play since the trade deadline not +9 per 100. So that's still pretty good, still really good. But not blowing teams away the way that first lineup is.
Right.
Their third best lineup:
Mm-hmm.
Harden, Maxey, Tobias, Niang, Embiid. That lineup in 52 minutes of play, plus 0.3 per 100 possessions.
Yeah, I was about to say it can't be like anything crazy with that
They are barely skating by with 3 lineups.
Yeah,
barely. That's extremely problematic that you don't have more than 3 lineups that you can credibly go to that and sample size have proven that they can do anything positive on the court.
Yeah, and Doc has mentioned it the first couple of days of practice and leading up to this, he has admitted we are a work in progress, which is not something you really want to be heading into the playoffs. This is not a position you really want to be in. And this is why, I think this series is going to be so problematic. Like, the Raptors are a team that they're not the same talented team that won the championship in 2019. But they do have some pieces left from that team. Siakam, Van Vliet. I know Anunoby didn't play in the playoffs. He had the injury, but Anunoby was with them all season long. And so those 3 guys have been a part of that championship run. Trent was with them last year. He's with them again this year. Achua has really grown into his role as the starter on this team. The Raptors have depth. Scotty Barnes has been really good for them as a rookie. So, I look at the Raptors, and again, they don't have that big name player that are going to jump out at you. But I mean, dude, the Raptors, this series is going to be a knock it down, drag it out. It's going to be tough as hell.
Yeah. Now, on Toronto's side, if you thought those lineups were disappointing, wait until you see this in Toronto.
Yeah, they're not great. I'm sure they're not.
They're not. This is Toronto's top 3 lineups since the trade deadline.
Okay.
And I'm going to go in order of minutes played. So the most played lineup they've had since trade deadline: Kem Birch, Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent, Scotty Barnes. That lineup in 132 minutes, negative 5.5 per 100 possessions.
There's no way that's their best lineup.
That's their best lineup.
There's no way. I refuse to believe that.
Since the trade deadline, a minimum of 50 minutes played. That is that lineup has played 132 minutes. It's the most used lineup it has since the trade deadline, and they're negative 5.5 per 100. Now,
I refuse to believe that's their best lineup.
Now, Grant's no, it's not their best, but that's the most played lineup they have since the All-Star.
Okay.
Since the trade deadline. Granted, that lineup has played 11 games together, so they're missing some guys. They haven't had a lot of time together, but still,
they've been missing some guys. Van Vliet has been injured a lot.
Right. But even that lineup features him. That tells you that he's struggling. He's struggling. Their next most played lineup since the trade deadline: Siakam, Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, Gary Trent, Scotty Barnes. 74 minutes, 5 games played, negative 9.3 per 100 possessions.
Okay, but what's their best lineup, though?
Best lineup is this: 58 minutes played, 8 games. Pascal, Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., Precious Achua, Scotty Barnes. That lineup, 20 plus 23.2 per 100. So that's a lineup that I think you're probably going to see a ton of in this playoff series. And why is that? Because I think it's the mobility. Kem Birch is a big guy. And Achua is a little smaller, but he's more mobile. And I think that mobility, that ability to stretch out and shoot the 3, even if he's shooting like 30%, which I think he is right now.
Achua actually shot 5 for 6 from deep, I think, in the last matchup.
Right, which is an anomaly. Yeah. But still, he did it. So that's going to be their death lineup. That I think is that lineup with Achua playing the 5, which tells you, by the way, that they're going small. And so that brings us to our next point. The world's most enjoyable.
Oh, stop! I don't want to talk about this.
Some people debate about politics or healthcare or social issues. We debate about the backup center position for the Philadelphia 76ers.
Uh,
Doc has gone back and forth with us about who the backup center should be on after their season ending or their regular season finishing victory over the Pistons. Doc, I started the whole avalanche with asking him about playing Paul Reed in the postseason because Paul Reed looked really fucking good in the last couple games that he played.
yeah.
And Doc says that we're not going on a Paul Reed victory tour. I'm trying to win a real championship, man. That set Twitter on fire. Then
Yeah.
Kyle Neubeck follows that up with his question. I forget what it was, but it was basically, reiterating, this and that. Derek Bodner has the famous exchange where they go back and forth for multiple minutes about Paul Reed. I understand what Doc is saying about DeAndre and that DeAndre is is a more traditional big man. They like the fact that he commits fewer fouls, even though I would argue that probably isn't the case. And they like something that DeAndre brings. Now, when they go smaller, Doc said they're going to go with Paul Reed. And I think Paul Reed should be the guy, regardless of small versus big. The reason for that, I think he has a better will at the moment to be an effective backup center. He's hungrier than Jordan is. I mean, Jordan, he I will give him this. He devours rebounds. Like that's what he does. He secures the glass pretty often. But when he doesn't, he is literally not boxing people out. They're coming right in behind him, stealing rebounds away from him. When Paul Reed's there, the glass is protected. He's getting on the glass. He's fighting. He's fighting rebounds away from the opponent and creating additional possessions. He's crashing well. He's recovering from spot to spot defensively. I don't think there's any reason that Paul Reed shouldn't be the backup big man. In fact, let me give you some stats. When DeAndre Jordan is on the court and Paul Reed is off the court. So in other words, when Johnny Jordan is the backup big, those lineups in 203 minutes, minus 7.88 points per 100 possessions.
I know. I figured that.
Yeah. And bad. I mean, he's playing 11 minutes a game. That's really bad. Paul Reed in his spot played more minutes. He's negative 7.12 per 100. So the sample size for Reed is even though he's played more total minutes this year, we've seen Jordan in far greater excess, and we know Jordan's tendencies. So those numbers, I think, add up a little more.
I mean, sure, but when you look at Paul Reed also, I mean, there's a reason why he wasn't playing for a majority of the year, and it was kind of obvious to me every time he was out there. He had no idea where to go.
Yeah.
Like this. Okay. Like,
yeah.
And that's such an issue. Like when you have a guy like Paul Reed, like, again, I don't know. Again, you're talking to me, who's like not a huge Paul Reed guy. I'm just not.
I don't have an opinion on him yet because I don't have a ton to compare him against.
But it's because every time I see him out there, other than maybe the game against Detroit the other night, he goes out there and he just still has no idea where he's supposed to be on either end of the floor. Like whether it's an offensive set, he's very good at pick and roll. I mean, that's very simple. But any type of offensive set, he has no idea where he's at. Defensively, he's out of rotation a lot. That's why he's always picking up fouls. I mean, even against Indiana, what do you have? 5 fouls in like 10 minutes? I mean, come on. So you cannot do that in in the playoffs. You just can't. Now you can make the case that Doc probably should have played him in February or January. Like, okay, sure, because he's got to be able to learn somehow, some way. But just Paul Reed has such a long way to go, and people think that he's going to just go out there and make this huge impact in the playoffs. And I'm not really sure. Like, he'll probably have a couple of nice dunks. He'll have probably a nice block. They'll go ooh and ah a little bit, but let's just say your backup center comes in and commits 5 fouls in 10 minutes. That swings playoff games.
Yeah. And I think, and I do agree in that, like Reed can come in and commit a bunch of fouls early on, or be out of position and cause his teammates to commit fouls in the backup minutes as they try to recover to make up for his mistakes, and that could change that could change the game for you, which is it's problematic. At the same time, even though Reed makes mistakes, and even if he isn't long term the right guy, I still think that his ability to recover from his own mistakes and get back to the right position or save the play with effort is better than anything Jordan gives you.
I would agree to a certain extent, because I mean Jordan is just nowhere near the player he once was, but I mean just there's a reason why Jordan plays. So I mean I understand Doc's logic. It kind of comes down to the point where like they definitely should have signed somebody better than DeAndre Jordan. Just at the end of the day, you know, who knows who he's going to go with in this series. If he goes with Reed, I'll be very interested to see how the Raptors utilize him, because Toronto will be one of those teams I'll be like, yo, go at him. He's going to commit a bunch of fouls. Go at him. So, and because they got a high basketball IQ and they're smart, and they're going to know how to draw the fouls against Reed. But then with Jordan in the game, it's kind of like, oh, Jordan's in the game. Go at him too. Attack. So I think they're just kind of screwed in the backup minutes. Like no matter how you kind of look at it.
I would disagree there. I think the goal needs to be to just keep.
I don't think they're going to be able to, though. I see. I know where you're about to go. Just hold your head above water and keep things good till Joe comes back.
Just keep it even. Like just keep it even.
Yeah, right. Keep it even. I don't think they can. Not in this series, either with Reed or Jordan.
I don't know. We'll see. Well, it depends on the lineup they use, but I think Paul Reed can do some things. I think he can.
What, commit fouls?
Sure. So can Jordan.
Yeah, they're both going to. That's what I'm saying. I feel like they're screwed either way. Like this you look at the backup center spots, it's not in great shape right now.
No, it's not. It's not. And you would obviously rather have just about anybody you could get your hands on as backup center, as opposed to what they have. However, I think Paul Reed wins at the margins in ways that Jordan does not.
I mean, I guess you could say that again, because Reed is much more athletic. Reed is, he brings a much higher energy.
Right.
And he at least brings effort on the defensive end. Like there are times where Jordan just stands there. But
yeah, like Jordan doesn't box out. He doesn't give passionate contests. When there's a 50-50 ball, he's not getting on the floor for it. And beyond that, like when he's in the pick and roll, he's constantly jumping at the wrong decisions. I mean, he wasn't horrible in the first Harden game against Toronto. In fact, they really lost that game really more because of Harden. He committed like 3 turnovers in a row to begin the fourth quarter, and Toronto scored on all of them, and that was really like the game right there.
Yeah.
But you need to create every marginal advantage you can, especially with Thibault out. And I think you can win those minutes, or maybe not win, but you can do some damage control in those minutes with Reed, as opposed to just Drummond getting bludgeoned every time. Not Drummond, Jordan getting bludgeoned every time on the floor.
Yeah. Speaking of Drummond, they miss him. Good on Brooklyn to include that.
Smart. That was smart. All right, Ky. So, have we covered everything you think?
Honestly, I think we have. I think Philadelphia will win this series, but for I've seen some people think Sixers will sweep them. And just like I'm going to have to disagree wholeheartedly. This series will definitely go 6, and I've got Philadelphia in 7. Like that's probably my official prediction.
I'm taking the Raptors in 6.
Okay.
I'm holding on to that. They're going to win in 6. I think the average margin of victory in the series is going to be like 4 points, 5 points. Like this is going to be.
I feel like every game is going to be close.
Yeah, this is going to be a grinded out, painful, arduous series, and I just think when it comes down to, for me, I don't think Doc or this team as a whole, especially in their last 2 games against the Raptors, where the Raptors didn't have OG or Fred VanVleet.
Right.
They did not do anything to build any kind of equity to say, like, yeah, we can beat this team.
And I mean, VanVleet didn't play in 3 of the 4 games, and Toronto won 3 out of 4,
Correct.
during the regular season. So,
Correct.
I'm just holding on to Philadelphia having more talent. That's what happens in these playoff series. When you have the better talent, the best players, you normally are going to be able to come out on top. So that's why I have the Sixers pulling this out. But let's just say they have to grind it out with Toronto. Then round 2, you got to play Miami, who is a much better team. So
I actually think the Sixers are better against Miami than they are against the Raptors.
I don't think so. I don't.
Okay.
I've been much higher on the Heat than a lot of people have for some reason. I don't know why people are like acting like the Heat are bad. I mean, like, they're going to have the 6th man of the year in Tyler Hero, and then Jimmy Butler always seems to have a switch come playoff time. But I like the Heat.
All right. Well, we'll see. Maybe we won't even get to that point. He's Ky Carlin. I am Austin Krell. Ky, where can they find you?
You can find me at SixersWire.com. You can also find Austin at SixersWire.com as well. He and I are actually going to be putting together our playoff preview for Sixers Wire, our X Factors. You can look out for that tomorrow on SixersWire.com. Check that out in the morning. And then you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, Ky_Carlin.
Ky Carlin, everybody. I am Austin Krell. You can find me on Twitter at NBA Krell. I cover the Sixers for the Painted Lines, as well as the regular NBA as a whole for the NBA Wires on USA Today. Everybody, game 1 is at 6 p.m. on Saturday night. The series starts that night, and we will see you then. Again, thank you for tuning in, everybody. Have a good night.